Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this easy wire macrame bracelet. Now it has quite an intricate look to it, but it's really quite simple because we're only using one macrame knot throughout the bracelet. So if you want to learn how to make it, then stay tuned. So then, as for the materials that we need, first of all we need the wire here. So this is a 0.6mm regular round silver coated copper wire that I'm using, and we're going to be using this gauge for the whole bracelet. Then we need some beads as well, and the ones that I'm using here are some 4mm rounds. These specific ones are blue coated hematite gemstone rounds, and they're faceted as well, so give a lovely sparkle. But that's just what I'm using to demonstrate with. You can use different sizes and shapes of beads, you'll just have to adjust the technique a little bit. Then I'm using these ribbon ends here to finish off the ends of the bracelet so we don't have any of the wires sticking out and scratching us. And to those we can attach our findings, so I'm using a lotto claw clasp and extended chain, and of course some jump rings. So make sure to check out the description box below the video for the material list and any links that you might need. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. And then we need to cut some lengths of our wire, and what I have here is 4 lengths of about 60 centimeters each. Then what I've done is I've taken all the lengths of wire here and attached them to my mini macrame board using these slots, so it makes it really easy to do macrame with. And I've taken 3 of the lengths, attached them into one slot, and I've taken the remaining length and attached it into the slot right next to them. So we need to start working with these 3 wires here, and what I've then also done is I've taken one of them and also attached that in a slot on the bottom just to keep it fastened for now. It's just temporary because we're gonna keep moving these around. So that means I want to start making a square knot. So I'm using these 2 loose ones and I'm going to make it around this fastened one on the bottom, so the holding wire. So you just want to make a basic square knot with your wires. So I take my left one over first, and then I take my right one, bring it first of all over the one we already brought over, then underneath everything in the middle, make sure it comes up through the loop on the other side. So just a basic square knot. You also can do a cord. Then I grab both of the wires and then pull at them equally and further up the wire until it tightens nicely, something like that. Then we want to take the wire from the right side, because we now want to do the other half of the knot, and then bring it over, then take the left one over that, underneath everything in the middle and up through the loop, and then again we just pull at them evenly, tighten them all the way up below the first one. So this is now one full square knot, and I always like to smooth out my wire. Once I've tightened the knot like this, I just run the wire through my hands and fingers. So there we go. Now we have this in position. That's the very first knot that we made. And now we then need to move things around a little bit. So first of all, I'm releasing the wire from the bottom slot that was down there. Just release that for now, and then in the knot we just made, we had the furthest right wire there, kind of just freeing out of the way. So that means for the next knot that I'm going to make, I'm going to not use the furthest left wire. So just leave that out towards the left where it's naturally going. Just kind of make sure it's out of the way so we don't get tangled up, something like that. Then I have these 3 wires I'm going to now make a knot with, but the jobs are going to kind of switch a little bit between the wires. So previously this was the holding wire, and this, that's now the middle one out of these 3, was a working wire. This one here is now going to be the holding wire. So I'm going to gently bring it down a bit and just smooth it out as we go. And now I'm going to put this one into the bottom slot. Again, that's just temporary. I'm going to keep moving that around. And then I'm using the one that was the holding wire in the previous knot there. I'm going to use now as a working wire, and this wire that we haven't used yet. So we're going to use them 2 to make a knot around this holding wire in the middle. And what I also like to do is, instead of starting this knot from the same side, I would normally start with my left side just because that's what comes natural. I'm actually going to, because this is on the opposite side of the bracelet, I'm going to start from the right side. So I'm bringing the right wire over first, and then I take the left one here, bring it over that one, underneath everything in the middle and up through the loop, and then gently pull it out, and then just gently work with the wire here, because obviously reacts quite differently than cord would. And now we just want to tighten this. Now obviously this is going to get tightened to sit below the other wire. So just something like that. Now obviously you want to get your knots tight, but especially in the beginning, just be careful not pulling too tight, just because you can, if the wire isn't fastened enough on the back of the board, you can kind of end up pulling them through. So that's the first half. Then we take the wire on the right side, because we need to complete this knot. And now take the other side, bring that through, and then we just go and pull at these again and tighten the other half. So there we go. So now we have two knots kind of off from each other. One is below the other one, but slightly to the side, and they're mirrored as well if you have a little look at how they're actually constructed. But that was then a knot on this side, which means we have to swap wires again. So I'm releasing the wire that was in the slot at the bottom of the board, and I'm going to start adding beads in, but just I'm going to make a couple of knots before I do that, just because we need to have a little section that we can put the ribbon ends on at the end. Then we need to obviously identify which wires we need to do what with. So that means the furthest right one I just used for this knot here. We now need to leave that out because we're bringing the furthest left one back in, and we need to always have 3 every time we make a knot. So that means the middle one, that one that's naturally in the middle here, is then going to be the new holding wire. So I'm just going to gently bring that down and put it into the slot temporarily on the bottom of the board. And then we now just want to make another knot on this side here, and this is in the same direction, so I'm starting with the left one because I'm on the left side, kind of an easy way to remember as well. And then I just make my square knot, and of course this one is going to get tightened below the one we literally just made before on the other side. And now you can start to really pull nice and tight, because we have some knots already, so nothing's going to come undone now. I'll pull through. The wire's kind of locked itself in place. Do the other half of the knot and tighten that. And then here you can then see how it's actually going to end up being. We now have a little loop on this left side. That's where we're going to end up adding the beads when it comes to it. Right now I'm just obviously creating a little length here. Now just to be sure I have enough knots here without beads, I'm just going to do another one so I end up with 4 in total. So again, swapping my wires around. Now moving to the other side, and that's what we'll remember, we're starting from the opposite side. So I'm taking the right wire, we're making the knot on the right side, that means I'm starting with the right one, and then just do another square knot here. So I made my 4 knots now. Then I'm going to swap back to the other side again. So just maneuvering my wires around. So I'm leaving out the right one now because I'm going to make my knot on the left side. Taking the middle one of these 3 wires, placing the bottom. And now I want to start another knot here, but this is where I want to start adding in beads. So we're basically going to be doing that on the outside edges of the bracelet. So what I've done is I've taken the furthest left wire and then just brought the end in there. Then I take a bead and I want to add that onto the wire. I don't drop it. If I can find where the hole is, there we go. And then let it fall all the way down. You can see it's going to sit right there where it can't go any further. Then now we want to make another square knot in the exact same way as we've done before. So I'll start with this left wire, make my square knot, the first half of it here. Now all we just got to make sure of is that when we tighten this, is that the bead stays on this side of the knot. So it's going to end up being trapped, as you can see, between the 2 knots here on the left side. So that's one half of it. We need to make the other half and make it a full square knot. So starting from the opposite side to do that, and then pulling that through, and then tightening that, and then you can see that bead is now trapped there really nicely, and that's not going anywhere. And just to show you on the other side, it's the same thing. So same technique, release the wire that was fastened on the bottom, then I need to move to the right side, so I need to take the middle one out of those. Bring that down now. And then before we make the knot, remember to add the bead to the very outer wire. So obviously on the right side, here's the furthest right one, before we use it. So add that on and let it drop all the way down here, like that. Before we then make the knot, again, because I'm on the right side, I'm starting with the right wire. And then we just want to make the square knot in the exact same way. Pulling it through nice and gently. And then of course making sure that bead stays there. And tighten it nicely. So you can also see obviously the knots themselves, but also the beads kind of act as a stopper to how far you can tighten that knot now. And then do the other half. Just like this. So we've then completely trapped the bead on this right side in place as well. And then you can really start to see the effect that we're going to end up getting. So we're going to have beads along the outside edges on both sides, but they're kind of going to be off from each other, because now we're going to go to the side again, add another bead and make another knot. You just continue like this until you have the length that you want. Once you then reach the length you need, then here in the end, what I just want to do is make this basically look like the beginning. So I'm just going to do another few knots, just like we did in the beginning, but without beads. But the same technique otherwise. So again, swap my wires around, then just making the next square knot. And then we're going to get these few knots kind of extending the end a little bit that we can then use to finish it off with. So just do this. So all that's left to do now is finish off the wires here, so we can obviously finish off the ends as well and attach our findings. Now because this is wire, we don't have to worry too much about anything coming undone. But what I like to do is, I have this one wire that's coming out from the very last knot, that's the holding wire. Just going to leave that till the end. I'm going to get rid of the other ones first. These are all working wires previously that have been used. Now what you're going to find is that they're kind of coming out in different directions. Some are going to go out more towards the back and some more towards the front. You can also see where the kind of loop in the knot is coming over. So this one down here, the one pointing straight down to me, that one I have a loop coming over, so that wire is wanting to kind of go around towards the back. So what I'm going to do is let it go that way. So basically wrapping it around inside the knot, around the holding wire, and then to the opposite side. And then what I like to do is take my flush cutters, cut off the excess, but leave just a short little length. So I'm not cutting it off right where it's bending around. I leave a little length. A bit like that. I then take my chain nose pliers and squeeze down the end, coming from the other side here, just to make sure it doesn't stick out in any way. And the others are basically going to be the same, so that means this one right here is wanting to come this way over, so I'm just going to continue it, and because it's the same knot, I'm just going to take the other one straight away. And also, so these are now basically wrapping around this wire that's going straight out from that final knot. So I'm going to go in and cut off the excess. So there's just short little lengths left. Something like that. Then we can go in and squeeze. I like to kind of just bend the very tip inwards as well and squeeze it down. So basically the very end ends up inside the knot itself. Of course, just do the same with the one on the other side. Now it's not too crucial because we are going to use the ribbon ends, but I like to kind of just get it as kind of flat as possible. And then we have that last wire left. For this, to be honest, you don't need to worry too much. Nothing's going to come undone, so all we can do is take the cutters, put it right down to the end of the knot, and cut off the excess. Because it's not going to come undone, and it's going to go inside the ribbon end anyway. So there you go, you got rid of all the excess wires now. Of course, do the same thing on the other end, and then we just got to attach our ribbon ends. To then attach the ribbon ends, what I like to do as well is use a bit of glue, just for that extra security, and I'm using the E6000 because it works great with metal, and also it dries clear. So I'm just going to get my ribbon end ready here. And I just add a bit of glue on my toothpick. Doesn't have to be too much because it's just going to come spilling out. Just kind of get it on there. And then the aim is to get it inside the ribbon end, kind of covering the inside walls. Like I said, just enough to kind of cover it. It doesn't have to be full. And then whatever I have left on my toothpick, I like to then put on the end of the bracelet and make sure it goes in between the nooks and crannies of the wires. So which is great, we've got some knots here. It's going to really get in there because they're going to adhere much better together then as we put them together. So something like that. Then I put the ribbon end onto the end of the bracelet, take my flat nose pliers, and then I like to hold the bracelet in my hand and put a finger on either side just to hold it in place and hold it kind of straight. And then I start flattening this down. Before I squeeze it all the way down, I always just take my fingers off and make sure it's still centered, because it can slide a little around while you're squeezing it and flattening it. And then once you're happy with it, go in and do your final squeeze, nice and tight. Grip around those knots in the wire, and then obviously as the glue dries, it will really adhere nicely as well and long term. So now I've added the ribbon end here, obviously do the same on the other end, and then we have these loops on them. We can just attach our findings to them. So now the ends are finished off here. You can see I've got my extended chain on one end and the clasp on the other end. Then all this left to do is shape the bracelet. Now I do just want to mention that even though it looks overall the same, the two sides are slightly different if you look closely. You can see where the structure of the knots are. So just decide which side obviously you want outward, but then you just want to go in and start putting a curve into it. You can shape it around something like a bracelet mandrel, but otherwise you can also just use your hands and fingers. Just gradually put more and more of a curve into it, going back and forth. Make sure you don't just go into one place and put a big bend, because that'll put it out of shape. But the aim is just to bring the two ends there, so obviously the extended chain and the clasp, closer together, so we can actually use them. So we'll slowly get in there. Then, when you're about happy with the shape, you see I like to kind of make them oval rather than round, just because I feel that's more the shape of the wrist. Then we can then use the clasp, and your bracelet is done and ready to wear, and you have this really nice effect all the way along. So it's really just a nice and easy technique that we're using to achieve this quite intricate looking design. And of course you can play around with your beads, your wire, and the amount of knots that you make depending on the look that you want. But I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial here. Make sure to check out my channel for loads of other tutorials. Thank you so much for watching this one though, and I'll see you in the next one.